I've rarely been told that I am not loud enough, I'll tell you that. Thank you all for joining us here at the closing ceremonies of the 2016 Public Interest Environmental Law Conference. Before we get started, I have a brief announcement about a lost and found. There was a shirt taken from one of our tables. It's a white shirt with black and red lettering. It's about robotics. If you took it or if you've seen it, please return it. All right, with no further ado, let us get started. Opening our closing ceremonies tonight, we have someone affectionately called Dr. B by her students. Barbara Mossberg is a poet and a scholar, and has been a poet since she was 6 years old. Been a John Muir scholar since she was 12. And got her start as an environmentalist even earlier than that. At 4 months of age, actually, she was brought to Yosemite in a picnic basket. We're very excited to have her here to share some of her environmental poetry and her scholarly work on the inspires of our environmental laws, scholarly work that she shares internationally. So please help me welcoming Barbara Mossberg.
Thank you. You're beautiful. Am I taking a picture? I thank you, God, for this amazing day, for the leafy, greenly spirits of trees and this blue, true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I, who have died, am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday, and this is the birthday of life and of love and wings, and of the gay, great, happening, illimitably earth. How could anyone, seeing, feeling, tasting, touching, lifted from the no of all nothing, being human merely, doubt unimaginable you? Now the ears of my ears are awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are open. Your march, come in, how glad I am. Put down your hat, you must have walked. How out of breath you are. I got your letter and the birds. Did you leave nature well? Oh, March, come right upstairs with me. I have so much to tell. That's E.E. Cummings and Emily Dickinson, my eco co-presenters, representing the quiet environment. Delighted to join you on this tremendous occasion to speak on poetry, history, and its role in our moral imaginations, how we think about and value our environment, for which this conference represents an inexorable yet miraculous development in human planetary history. On behalf of poets, I'm honored to be here with you, reflecting with you on the unlikely, if not also preposterous theory that poetry has something to do with the fact that there is such a thing as a public interest environmental law conference. Your being here, the work you will return to, the work at hand, in your hands, what is possible. My heart rouses. Bring you news that concerns you and concerns many men. It is difficult to get the news in despised posts. Yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. So says William Carlos Williams. That's a pretty large claim for poetry, even by a poet. Isn't poetry despised or loved a luxury we cannot afford? With all there is to be done, I know. But Williams making a life and death case for the significance of poetry's muse, ought to know. His day job is as a physician, with literal blood on his hand. At the end of the day of encountering human suffering, he goes home to make a house call on himself, writing poetry literally on prescription pens. So, what is in poems? The news that we need, without which we die miserably every day. For people whose energies and commitments are saving Earth, speaking of life and death stakes. A little madness in the spring is wholesome even for the king. But God be with the clown who ponders this tremendous scene, this whole experiment in green as if it were his own. Who owns the earth? This has ever been the issue. In headlines here in Oregon and nationally recently on the cover of this month's Orion, and these lines by Emily Dickinson, daughter of a lawyer in the 1860s. So, ownership, her brief. The legal owner of the land, King, responds to the kind of spring we're seeing here this week with your coming, I'm just saying, okay, with a little madness. On the one hand, on the other, the clown. No formal land owning powers. Response to the land wonderment. Wonder about, mull, consider it seriously, profoundly. A reverential focus. To see it as tremendous, whole, infinite, happening before our eyes, not finished. This whole experiment in green, as if it were his own, and God, presumed creator, scientist, true owner of this experiment in green, is on the side of the clown's approach. Who really owns it or cares for it appropriately? Pondering, seeing it as tremendous, valuing the poet. In Ralph Waldo Emerson's words in his essay, The Poet, in the 1830s, read and underlined by Emily Dickinson, he says, "You will be known for a churl, a fool, if you express this attitude toward Earth at a time then, as now. Wild and wilderness is defined as wasteland, barren, desolate, savage, frenzied, furious, unruly, ungovernable, lawless, when it's being legally poisoned, trashed, raised, because it's a commodity that people own." But Emerson says, if you express it, you will be air lord, sea lord, land lord. His pen here, the one who owns it and is truly responsible for land, air, sea management. Here's his fool's clown take on nature in 1827, which Dickinson is responding to, which is going to set the tone for transformational environmental law about public interest and stewardship. He writes, The River, in 1827. And I behold once more. Beholding is a way of seeing, as in Job. If I beheld the sun when it shined, or the moon walking in brightness, behold is a poet's word. He characterized how we gaze with reverence, awe, wonder, respect, at some being or force that brings us to a place of humility, suspended knowing, and rapture. I behold the blue river, the same blue wonder that my eye admired his sunny bubbles ere he washed the fragrant gladness in my father's fields. We see the river as a being, to him, revered passionately at a time when rivers are public sewers, industrialization is transforming forests and fields, raising, poisoning, when wild wilderness has this official definition. This was the same year that Noah Webster publishes his dictionary, saying it is wasteland. the public enemy. But Emerson calls on us to look at this river, at this wild. Behold, he says, look, here he is, the river. And these the fields on whose flowers I chase the butterfly, and hark, where overhead the ancient crows hold their conversation in the sky. Oh, call not nature dumb. These trees and stones are audible to me. These idle flowers that tremble in the wind, I understand their syllables and all their sad significance. The wind that rustles down the well-known forest road, it has a sound more eloquent than speech. The stream, the grass, the sighing wind, all of them utter sounds of admonishment and grave parental love. Emerson read Shakespeare. Trees have tongues. Brooks are running books. Sermons, stones, and good in everything. And what does nature tell him? Listen, we're blowing it. He says, they are not of our race, they seem to say, and yet have knowledge of our moral race and somewhat of majestic sympathy for us. Pity for this puny clay that holds and boasts the immeasurable mind. And then he turns around what people felt about Earth as the antagonist. Earth is not only loved, but loving. This is transformation. I feel as if I were welcome to these trees after long months of weary wandering, acknowledged by their hospitable boughs. They know me as their son, for side by side, they were coeval with my ancestors, adorned from my country's times. 1827. A view of the environment is teaching us, if we, through our poets, are so attuned, inspiring Emily Dickinson, Thoreau, John Muir. So we can leap and bound from this to a set of basis of environmental law and public policy on ownership and stewardship of the land that offers us a lens into the role that poetry may play in civic leadership and cultural mindset. The Yosemite Grant, an act of Congress signed into law in 1864, the follow-up Naeyln Act of 1890 with President Benjamin Harrison, the creation of Yosemite National Park, 1892, 1906, National Park Service, 1916, and Sierra Club versus Secretary Morton, 1969-71. One example. In 1849, the gold rush suddenly brings thousands of non-Native Americans, miners and settlers to the far west. Tourists, mining, timber, grazing interests result in catastrophic environmental damage to the Sierra ecosystem. Only 15 years later, President Abraham Lincoln is declaring a section of it, Yosemite Valley and the Mariposa Grove, a public trust of California, the first time the U.S. government deems land protected for the public interest, laying the foundation for the establishment of our national parks. Now, in 1864, when Congress is voting on this, setting aside this land for the public, where does this come from? Lincoln has his hands full. The Civil War, 26,000 people behind one day, Emancipation Proclamation. Yes, but what possesses him to sign a bill in the midst of all this on some remote property 3,000 miles away? What was he thinking? If we drill down into that legal mind of his, what do we find? We find the Bible and Shakespeare and poetry. He wrote it, read it, memorized it, carried it around, he recited it, he wrote out copies to people. His favorites, Edgar Allan Poe, The Raven, Robert Burns, To a Mouse, Oliver Wendell Holmes, The Last Leaf, William Cullen Bryant, Nature's Hymn, William Knox, Mortality. Well, Dr. B, with all due respect noted, what do these poems have to do with life and death and death and death that Lincoln is responsible for? Poe's Raven was upon a midnight dreary. A man's up late, poring over books, slowly despairing over something that's lost and cannot be brought back to life. A raven appears on his bust of Pallas Athena, wisdom, and he asks the bird, nature, can it be brought back? Can this pain be surceased? And the raven says, never more. This speaks to Lincoln. He recites it over and over. Everybody he meets, he says, listen, you've got to have this, and he writes it out for them. When by Bobby Burns, upon disturbing a field mouse nest by plowing, who cares? But Burns is overcome with remorse. He says, on turning up her nest with the plow, November 1785, this wee, timorous beastie, oh, what a panic's in thy breasting. And he's saying, this is our fault, that you're afraid of us. And then he breaks away from Scottish dialect into English because he wants to be fully understood. Make no mistake about it. This is his message. I'm truly sorry man's dominion has broken nature's social union and justifies that ill opinion which makes thee startle at me, thy poor earth-born companion and fellow mortal. Again, we see this poet's idea that first creatures are our equals, kin, whom we mistreat in our arrogance that we own them and can dispose of them or dispose to them what we wish. Lincoln loved all Shakespeare, but Macbeth knows his speech, what have I done? Seeing the woods are burning. Loved Bryant. Groves were gods for his temples, a transforming way to see this unruly, ungovernable, ferocious, wild wasteland environment. In the Bible and Shakespeare, the forest transforms us. In Isaiah, splendor in the grass, the cypress trees rejoice with you. You shall go out with joy. The mountains and hills shall break forth before you into singing, and all the fields shall clap their hands. So Wordsworth in 1830 summarizes our sense of loss of such nature, conscience stricken. What have we done to the land? And this is what Lincoln is reading as he is signing into law. There was a time when meadow, grove, and stream, the earth, and every common sight to me did seem apparelled in the glory and freshness of a dream. It is not now as it has been of yore. The things which I have seen I now can see no more. The rainbow comes and goes, and lovely is the rose. But yet I know wherever I go that there has passed away a glory from the earth. The pansy at my feet doth the same tale repeat. Whither is fled the visionary gleam? Where is it now, the glory and the dream? And then he says, wet though the radiance which was once so bright, be now forever taken from my sight, though nothing can bring back the hour of splendor in the grass or glory in the flower. To me, the meanest flower that blows can give thoughts that too often lie to me. So, when there's an issue of an unprecedented opportunity in human history to undo or prevent further loss of nature, to preserve land for public use, Lincoln owns the responsibility and signs this into law. Now, I am going to skip over the whole story of the passage of the Enabling Act and Yosemite National Park and the National Park Service Sierra Club versus Secretary Gordon to conclude with my own efforts to use my words as we tell kindergartners and to try to save one tree, a willow in Vermont on Lake Champlain, not a great lake, but a good lake. A tree that was too big to see all at once. People would walk by and say, when are you going to cut it down? When I had to sell the house and move back to Washington, D.C., I wanted to figure out a way to save it. So I took a page from John Muir's and all the poets' book, and I used my words. My father was 81 and flew from Los Angeles to help me construct a waterproof frame and chains to put this message on the tree to prevent it from being cut down, what to say. So my bold-faced strategy to use these words. I began with, behold. And then I thought, nobody's going to cut down a tree that's good luck. A good luck tree. And then I made up a law. The John Muir Educator Society Award for promoting love of earth. Made that up. Treasure, rare, magnificent specimen willow. This tree has inspired poetry and dedication to the preservation of the earth. All who live with this tree are protected by her strength. Soil is bound. My father said, you've got to put some science in there. The soil is bound, preventing erosion and flood damage. In life's storms, she provides comfort and joy in this current of the spirit, known also as the blessing tree. In many hard times, I was the president of our college, and you needed all the help you could get. The tree has reawakened my sense of gratitude and wonder for living on this earth and my commitment to teaching about its beauties. She has given me heart and seen me through, danced a hula, graceful as a ballerina in a tattered tutu. As you come under her care, know this tree is loved and will love you too. This desire to save the earth comes from the act of beholding. If we behold what there is before us to see, we have a chance to hold it. Hold on, as the song goes, to what we've got. Well, I tried to use my words and it did not work. The new owners cut down the tree, changed criminal, but legal scholars, activists, community leaders, workers in the trench to fight to save the earth in the public interest. This imagination of what the earth is and means to us, translated into law and public policy, I rejoice it is in your hands. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be with you on this occasion for all that's at stake in this public interest environmental law conference. I hear John Muir rejoicing in you, your work, with so much at stake. Know that the news of poetry has your back. May its force be with you, my heroes.
Thank you, Barbara. That was incredible. And now, before we get to our final keynote of the conference, on behalf of the other co-directors of this year's PIELC, it is our honor to present the David Brower Lifetime Achievement Award. Every year, this award is given to someone who embodies the spirit of David Brower. That is someone who was a leader, a teacher, an inspiration, and of course, a visionary as well. Now, to help me introduce our recipient, I called upon a longtime friend of the conference and longtime Asian forest activist, Michael Donnelly. Please help me welcome him and present the award.
Thank you. So I'm here today to introduce the very worthy recipient of this year's David Brower Award for his lifetime of achievement in grassroots environmentalism and native rights activism. My good friend and ally, Calvin Akakta. I'm sure everyone here knows who David Brower was. The arch-druid, he was the godfather of the modern environmental movement, and he pretty much had a hand in just about everything that's come along since. And I just wanted to note that it was here at this conference in the mid-'80s that Calvin, myself, George Atia, a number of other people that are here today sat in a pizza place somewhere near campus, and we talked with David Brower and said, look, we have to come up with some way to save what's left of the ancient forest. We weren't even calling it that yet. We hadn't, James Monteith hadn't come up with that name yet. But David Brower listened to us. He pulled out a pen. Nobody had any paper, so he grabbed a cocktail napkin and he gave us a to-do list. And I wish I still had that. We had that framed, but we did it. And David Brower was very instrumental in the campaign that Calvin and I are most associated with. So I want to thank the co-directors of this year's conference for choosing Calvin for this prestigious award. And I want to thank you all for the opening ceremonies. I was really touched and impressed by the opening ceremonies and the way you set the tone for this conference this year. Thank you for that. And I want to note that, sure, there's many other people here today that would be very valuable ballot recipients for the same award, and I'm sure many will be in the future. I first heard of Do the Cockpit back in the day when some of my friends in the American Indian movement were talking about his highly respected leadership role in the movement. I didn't really meet Calvin in person until later on when I was living in Bright Bush Hot Springs and serving on the board of directors of the Oregon Natural Resources Council in the 1980s. Both of these organizations were really thrust into seminal leadership roles in the effort to save our ancient forests. And like I noted before, Brower was one of our allies and mentors in it. And soon Calvin started showing up everywhere. He showed up at public hearings on protecting wild rivers and forests in the state. He spoke at these hearings as the voice of the many species who had no voice. And this was a role he reprised hundreds of times over the years. And soon Calvin was showing up at forest protection rallies and logging protests. I once saw him bring Clinton's environmental advisor Katie McGinnis to tears with his citing of the impacts the pro-logging plans that the Clinton administration was going to have on native species. And I just heard today, I got reminded by Asante about the time I took over the Forest Service headquarters, and Calvin was there, and he basically said, now look, you guys, if you don't listen to me and change your ways, we're going to be back here next year. I'm going to take this building apart brick by brick. Calvin joined the board of the Native Forest Council, and he was one of the co-founders and first board members of the Friends of Opal Creek, along with George Azita is here today to celebrate and honor his great ally, Calvin. Calvin and his ally, the extraordinary Oglala spiritual leader, Wilbur Stampede, brought a spirit of reverence to the early ancient forest movement. They also conducted many protection ceremonies at Opal Creek and elsewhere. You name any of the major sites and actions of the campaign here in Oregon, from the Siskiyous to Nola Hill, and Calvin was there, leading support. And I can't overstate the importance of the alliance between grassroots environmentalists and native activists. Many public lands protections have been won through this collaboration. And Calvin negotiates the two cultures and the political and academic cultures better than anyone I know. He was and he is the glue that holds this coalition together. The Public Interest Environmental Law Conference has always respected and promoted this alliance. And the awarding of the David Brower Award here today also honors that connection. David Brower always spoke about how our victories are temporary and theirs are permanent. He'll say ever vigilant. When someone like Calvin says the place must be saved, it must be saved. And I hope everyone's going to stick around today and listen to what our Apache brothers and sisters have to say about what their needs are to protect their sacred lands. And here's another example of how far the reach of Calvin has gone in this movement. I just heard this yesterday, that Michael Nixon, one of the attorneys for the Apache, the reason he's involved with the Apache is because he was involved earlier on at Nola Hill with Calvin, and word spread the movement, and there's that connection as well. And you know, Calvin's a humble guy, and I'm sure he's already tired of me talking about him. So, plus I'd rather hear Calvin talk, and he's going to talk to us some too, and it's always worth listening to what Calvin has to say. But to suffice to say, he was crucial to both the American Indian movement and the restoration of native rights, and to the forest and species protection movement, as well as ongoing youth outdoor immersion programs. The theme of this year's conference is A Legacy Worth Leaving. Well, I was talking recently with my pal, the indispensable civil liberties attorney, Lauren Reagan. And she noted that for her, the true test of a grassroots activist is how well they go about replacing themselves for future generations. Well, Calvin has certainly passed the rate. Look around you, like me, many people here today already see Calvin as a mentor, and hopefully many more in the future will be inspired by Calvin. This honor assures that. Thank you all, and thank you, Brother Calvin, for all you've done for Mother Earth and all her children.
Well, good afternoon, people. It's always good to come home. We have a lot of free people out there today. You want to see the hands of the young attorneys that's going to be making a commitment for the earth. That's why I come. Take a look at it. All of these beautiful people. That is what inspires me to know that there are others that have the spirit and the heart to touch the earth and all of its people. And one of the things when Michael mentioned, the legacy, I was thinking about that. One day, at a rally, there was a rally there in Salem at the state capitol. And I had the opportunity to say a few words. It's great to be here today at this house of battle, to listen to this talking, planning on how to rape the earth and destroy its people. I want you folks to take a good look on top of this building. It's the sacred idol of Oregon. This man standing there with an axe in his hand and a stump behind him. Oregon's idol. Oregon's legacy. And at that time, I was trying to think of a way that the good people in Oregon would plan on a new figure to put on top of that house of Babel. And that's always been on my mind. And I think I'll speak even more about that. I do need to impress upon the young people. And who I'm talking about, being young people, anybody younger than me. There's those I've met many years back that have helped me along and welcoming me to their camps, their villages, to their actions, to many different places that have inspired me and kept my spirit alive. As this gathering today does for me. And the giving of an award kind of remind me of the day when I first set foot on this campus at the old school. And I walked into this room where David Brower was speaking. He had a wonderful audience like you, listening to him. And I stood there off to the side listening. And he went on for about half an hour. And finally, I had to raise my hand. To there and waiting like that. And get his attention. He glanced over and saw me. He kept talking. I had done it again. And finally he stopped. Acknowledged me. I just need to say right at this time, that your speaking is very good, but I have not heard you mention a deer or an elk or a bear, or the birds, or the swimmers. And I just had to say that. And it kind of embarrassed me because I'm not supposed to be doing things like that by interrupting people. That was the first time I met humans. But later on, we spoke, and a few short years back, I met him in Aspen, and we visited again. And it was wonderful to hear him say that he always enjoyed at the different conferences that I'd be there and he'd stick around to hear me, because I was one of his teachers. I inspired him. So we all have this connection together in that way, helping each other grow and learn. And that's the biggest thing we have to do, is to know that we are the teachers of this land. Learn all about it from the heart. and let your spirit grow. Learn about it from all the voices that are in the water. There are many songs in the water, many songs in the trees, and the bird that comes to your home and sings to you in the morning. Get up and acknowledge that bird. Thank the birds for the bird songs they sing all around you. They bring those blessings. So learn them songs. When I was a child, grandfather talked to me about that. If I'm on a trail, hear some birds, I was made to sit down and start learning. There's so many different birds that I came across that learning all of their songs was kind of impossible, I thought. But then, the way the Spirit moves is a collection of all the beautiful things that's inside of you. And when that certain song or teaching needs to be there, it will come up for you. But have that faith and that understanding. And that is part of the natural law that we need to get back to. Most of what I speak on today is the natural laws of the land and the giving back to the natural people. And we have come to a place where we have reached a spot that my elder people talked about. We're going to come to a crossroad where on one side there is no spirit, and on the other side is a powerful spirit of change. And you make that choice. And when I was thinking about the word change, it reminds me of a man that stood before a whole nation of people across the land saying, change is coming to America. And everybody screamed and clapped their hands. And he continued that. And change has come. And we've become the most violent and treacherous nation in this whole world. Because of those words, change is coming to America. We have to choose our own people, the environmental leaders, to fill these positions. in the election changes needed to remove presidents from their positions and other lawmakers when necessary. It has to be done. And we have to talk about it and present it in a way that everybody will understand, that the children will understand. Because we are responsible to teach the children of the blessing way, the way of the song, the way of the dance. And I'd love to see it at a time when the women would take their rightful place back, and the men become men, step aside and support that leadership of the women. That is a wonderful feeling. I can think back to the time when my grandmother would take our small clan to the top of the prayer butte for blessings. And it was a dark day when she passed on. And the younger women turned their backs on their responsibilities to do those ceremonies. So we have to start turning the page after page, learning the traditional ways of curing our land, the spirit of the land, and protecting the homes of all of those that live in the waters, in the forest lands, in the skies. For all of you this year, make that commitment to keep coming back and helping each other, sharing what you learned with each other, talking about them, singing about them, and doing the dance of life. It won't be too long, and I will pass on the prayer bundle, the prayer staff, to my son. And I can be out of the way for a while, resting, doing some very necessary things for my well-being. So I'm grooming him at this time. And at the same time, I have another young man on the east side of the mountain that wants to adopt me, and so I will be teaching him as well for his clan. And those are the important pieces. We all have history. Learn all about your history, your old ancient clans, tribes. Learn about the way they were before man became jealous and envious and wanting power that the women had. They had to become very violent in order to achieve that. I'm learning about those things. And that comes from across the water. The writing of a book of laws by these men, the writers, the poets, philosophers, and all of those that was brought together to create this good book, the book of men. And then came about the destruction of the women's leadership in all the different villages in Europe, small villages, and there, the women, they were the healers, the teachers that led their people to the mountain to do the dance and the song of life. So that was the beginning. And so many thousands of women, that was burned at the stake, tortured and killed in every village. It went on and on and on. And it was brought here to this country. And the destruction of the women and all of the medicine people. It could be rounded up and slaughtered took place here, and it's still happening. We are still being threatened and killed. So as I continue learning about the past, realizing that the past is the future, if we refuse to learn about the past, and not change that. So we do have a big job. Spiritually and physically. And at one time in the ceremony, I stood up and gave my pledge before the holy man. And let them know that my life as a being on this land do for the people. The ants and the eagle, swimmers and the flyers. The human beings, all everything. I heard about, I was to be there, then support whatever way. And I will continue to do that. My relatives in Arizona, I'm gonna get out of the way now and let them carry on. I want to hear what they have to say. It's very serious. Sacred land. It belongs to them. And the corporate destruction has come about. By any means possible. And we have to face that. So where I am is I'm still willing to stand with my people, for the people, for our mother and hers. So I thank you for the award. And I thank you for your ear. And carry on the spirit of life. Love you all. You're so kind. Thank you.
As Calvin mentioned just now, we have one keynote remains, really two keynotes. We have two speakers bringing from the Apache Stronghold. Calvin said in Arizona, we're fighting and continue to fight against Rio Tinto corporate interests who want to take our sacred land. And they have introductory video themselves, so I won't spend too much time introducing. They can speak very well for themselves. Please help me welcome Wendsler, Nosie Sr., and Naeyln.
And as the speakers before us that spoke about the past, present, and future, I mean, you know, when people try to look for a blueprint or a foundation, that's really, really important, and we all need to understand as people. You know, there's terrible things, and you all know that's happening in this country. And speaking for what you have seen here, one of the most important things for us is healing. At one time, you know, I stood like many others and was very proud to be an Apache. You would say, which means that, you know, I'm a proud person and that I bring that pride within me. But I didn't know that I was a victim, because even making that statement, we're victims. And I didn't realize that until I started to have my own children and went back in the days of the upbringing with my mother and not wondering why, and then wondering why I was having a difficult time with my own family. And I always remember the day I spoke with her, and then the day she called me back and cried and apologized and told me that I'm passing the sickness to you. And so we had a long talk, and what she was referring to was that when we were brought there as prisoners of war, her grandmother that she was raised there was brought there as prisoners of war, and everybody else before her was born there in San Carlos it was a concentration camp, it was a prison, and then later recognized as a reservation. And so with all the federal policies, from our people being killed, from our people being incarcerated, from people who had potential to lead the tribe, were all disappearing. And then children were sent all over this country, like to be, as the way we say, when they dissect of who we are, and what was inside of us. And so many of those children never returned. And then next came the policies about education and assimilation, and the same thing happened. So from that time to my time, being able to travel the country and having people take me to massive graves throughout the United States where they have 16 to 25 of our children being buried in one hole. Untold stories in this country, untold history. And coming back and really understanding what our people had went through and why, you know, before me and within me, never hugging my children, because there was a disconnect. The older grandparents didn't want to associate with the younger ones because they're going to be gone. And then the same way with my mother, there was a disconnect because we were going to be gone through the policies of the federal government. And so comes me now as a father, and not hugging my own children, but arguing with my daughter, and my daughter making a stand in a position about her. And so coming back and having those ugly talks with my mother and realizing that what she was describing was post-war syndrome. Now, when I became the chairman of the tribe, I used to read all the reports. Drugs, alcohol, not being a father, mother leaving children. And so I used to tell my directors, you have to go further back to the link of where this started from. Because one of the things my mother worked really hard at was to not be like my father and his dad. Because a lot of alcoholism was there. Because you got to remember, men weren't men anymore. Men couldn't be men for those conditions that we lived under. So people gave up about what they were going to be like for tomorrow. But I always remember my mother really crying and really working hard with the 4 sons that she had to say, no, we can't allow this to happen. No, we can't. You can't do this. We have to come back. We have to come back because of what the prophecy says in the Apache way, that we have to come back. Because if not, then everything is chaos in this world. And with that, brought the teaching of, I guess, my journey in this road about what was going to happen next. Because the disease that she was passing to me was to be invisible. Because when I grew up on the reservation and going to the town of Globe, which was 23 miles away, we hid in the car and we had the opportunity, we had to stay beside my mother. And for her, it was really important not to be seen. Because if we were seen, we were going to be taken away. So that same fear lived and lived until the arguments began about why. Why do we have to hide? And this comes this generation, making that position to stand and to make a big difference. And I applaud the next generation because they were bringing in questions and questioning all of us in leadership, questioning us who were holy people, questioning the elders, questioning. But we had to listen to the younger people because they didn't know who they were going to be and what they were going to be. And so that was something really important about the disease that lives on the reservation that comes from post-war syndrome. We have to remember that there was a war here in America. You have to remember that there were people put in concentration camps. You have to remember that these places are called reservations today. And that's why you hear all these horrifying stories. So my journey was internally that I had to lead my people in a different direction. I had to tell my people the ugly story of reality of why we're like this. Because so many of us were standing up for the flag. So many of us were singing the songs. So many of us were wearing the shirts, but not even understanding why we had the flags as t-shirts and shirts. Because we're the only people can be different about it. Because every one of those stars, those colors, representing conquering America. America has gone to a lot of foreign wars, but never have put a star in that flag of conflicts that they were in. So when we see the American flag, it's a reminder of what happened to us. Now, I don't know about here in Oregon, but in Arizona, when Geronimo was captured, in every little town they put celebrating Globe founded in 1872. 1872 was when we were all put as prisoners of war. In the Oak Flats area, we were removed in 1872. So the Miami and Globe, the surrounding towns, celebrate that year. But so when we see that number, we see the horrifying events that took place and putting us as prisoners of war. And now today, our people suffered from that. So the big push was internally for me to work with my people and to understand their perspective and to heal. We have to heal. And so I tell my people, I am a victim of the past. But you know what? I said, I don't fear the future anymore. Because I understand what happened to my people and what happened to me. Because only then can we heal. But if you go on imagining and pretending, then you don't heal. So I said, as much as tribal leadership don't like it, as much as our surrounding towns don't like it, as much as the state of Arizona don't like it, and the United States Congress, it's going to be said. Because we love this place as much as everybody else. And the only way America is going to heal is by truth. By truth. Because if not, you and I know that when you're living a lie, it never heals. You pass it, and you pass it, and you pass it. But when we confront, then only healing can come from that. This is what you're witnessing here. It's because we're saying no more. We will never live in the frame of the policy of the United States and everybody else that make this frame of law for us to live within that confinement. That's called decolonization. But you know what, people? My trip to Washington, D.C. and stopping in many of the states, making my way to Washington, I learned you are also colonized. You are also. So the point is that we and you have to heal. Together, we have to heal. It's a very important spiritual message that's coming. You have to believe. Because if you go back to the founding of this country, and you can do the European studies, if America has hidden ours. But America was founded for its natural resources. America was founded to please the colonizing countries for their status. And why I say that strongly today is because you look at what John McCain is doing. What you just read here, 75% is leaving this country. Through John McCain, he wiped out NEPA, the 5 cultural laws that protect the land that you and I have to abide by, was exempt by a late-night rider in the defense bill, a must-pass bill. That became an American fight. It's no longer an Apache fight. It's you and I fighting what John McCain did. Because what he failed to do, from the tribal perspective, what he failed to do was to insert in this law that what he has planned to do or going to do does not affect reservations. And the reason why I say that is because reservation is owned by the federal government, federal land. So right now, as I speak, as long as this bill remains and it stays, then all Native people's religion, voice, and the way of life has been destroyed. Right now, as I speak. This is why in no other fight in this country has over 500 recognized federal tribes have band together. Resolutions are being passed throughout this country by not only tribes, organizations. Because I would think that all religious people will be offended by this. I would think that all military people, past and present, would be offended by this. For the purpose of going and protecting the rights for our religion and for the right to be heard. I mean, that's what I hear. And it being John McCain escalates it even more so. Because of what he states throughout this country and what he says, but yet does totally opposite within this country. So people, we come here to your beautiful part of the country and our Native brothers and sisters, the first people, and ask for help. We come here to ask for help because we are not the only ones being affected by it. We all are. So the position that we take here is not to defend only our children, but the children of this country and the ones yet to be born. You have to remember that the politicians, the political politicians, are going after every federal land. Because I'll give you just a real basic example. In our annual run to Mount Graham, 25 years ago, the railroad tracks, there was over 15 men working on the railroad tracks, pulling and replacing and hammering. Last year, when we ran, there was only 2 people working because they had this massive machine pulling, replacing, and hitting. And this is the biggest fear that in Apache country we talk about these mechanical things coming that has no brain, but can be used for good and bad. So the younger ones, when we go by and we see this transformation happening, brings that great fear that the ones before us talked about. Where is this country going? There are arguments about jobs and jobs and jobs. But it's all going to technology. What's going to happen to the rest of the human beings? And that's why I tell you, that's what they did to us when they placed us on the reservation, to be no more who we are. So when these mechanical things take over, who are you going to be? Who are your children going to be? And that's why it's so important that American people reroot themselves. Another thing that I learned crossing this country is how we're not rooted anymore. You know, I've been in so many places and talked to so many people. But when I met all the African Americans, to all their leaders, you know, they were cut at the bottom of the feet to bring here, but never was rerooted. The Oriental people, times I spent with them back east, Philadelphia and everywhere else, tell me the same story. Even though they're here, they don't feel like they're from here. They were never rerooted. And then the first Americans, the white Americans who came, were brought here too, not knowing that there was for an economic reason for the other country, and never were rooted here. And the sad thing about Native Americans is that we're lifting our feet and we're cutting our own roots to be like everybody else. And that scares me. Because once we're not rooted, then that's where they say chaos will come. Because nobody will have that foundation of where we came from. It's lost in this next generation. So it's important that we understand, and that my preaching across this country now is that we all have to decolonize. We all have to heal. And the only way that's going to happen is through spirituality. No other way. No other way is it going to happen. Because everyone has a conscience, has a spirit. And if it's done right, then the unification will come as one to heal the greatest God has given us, which is our spirit and the mother of this earth. As it was said to you earlier, we all have a history. We all have a clan. We all have a purpose. In Apache country, when we do our sweats, the prayer is about return, return. And it was awesome for the first time to have a sweat with all the 4 people in the beginning. And what I mean by that, there were Indian people, there were Chinese people, there were black people, and there were white people. All together in a sweat as brothers. Because in our belief is that the black people were given the power of prayer with water. The Oriental people were given the power of wind. The Indian people were given the knowledge of the mother. The white people were given the gift of fire. So when we do our sweats, having a white man take care of the fire is the way it was. Having the Oriental stand outside and pray before we come into the sweat was his job. The African man to bring in the water into the sweat, that was his job. And for the native people was to sing the holy song of the earth. I never thought I would see that day. And believe me, change is coming, but do you hear it? You have to hear it and you have to feel it. Because that's the greatest gift that God has given the world. And this is the message that we're taking across this country. And we know, as I tell the younger people, it's like a gift, a present. Beautiful. But when you unwrap it, you're going to find the ugliness that deceived us. And that's where we are headed as a people. So people, you already are part of that. And the walk, I'll give you an example of Mount Graham. The Pope sent his cardinal to Tucson, Arizona, who got into some really nice vehicles and drove to Mount Graham, about 80 miles away. From desert to about 11,000 feet, he drove to the very top. And people surrounded him. And I remember standing there, and this was the telescope project. They were trying to build 32 telescopes of Mount Graham. And I always remember he asked people to step aside. He wanted some time. 15 minutes. Then he came back to the crowd and told the crowd, there's no spiritual feeling here. I feel nothing. Got back in his vehicle, had it back down, and went back to Rome. So we all looked at him and said, what? You have to sacrifice in order to feel what God has given the world. So this is why we take all our people on this journey. Because it's like me going to your house. If I don't ask for permission, I'm not welcome. I'm disobedient. I'm ignorant. But if I ask for permission, then you will open your house. It's the same thing with the environment. Because when those corridors open, then you feel the spirituality of what God gave the world. And that's where technology with these things are scary. You can still have it, but understand this as the base, because all that can be misused to this here. So Where we are today is that we are not vacating this place. We have no permits, nothing. They will have to force us off the sacred land. And there are two bills in the House. Well, there's a bill in the House and there's a bill in the Senate. Sponsors and co-sponsors. But you have John McCain and Gosar holding it up. We're going to need your help to notify them that this needs to be heard in a committee. But it is setting up a lawsuit for us. The negligence of the United States. Because there is already a sponsor and co-sponsor on the bill. But if you can help me, www.Apache Stronghold @.com. I'm learning. So if you can help me, we need America's involvement because it's not just our battle anymore. It's everybody's battle here. So with the remaining time, I want to leave it for my granddaughter. My granddaughter here, after being exiled in the sacred place and the holy place of Jishan, Mount Graham, over 100 years, we returned to have our ceremony after we had been exiled out of these sacred places. And now my granddaughter leads this fight for the next generation. But just like every other father and grandfather, I worry about her. Because as my life is being threatened by the mining people, I was supposed to speak in Mexico. But when they got word I was coming, I was told not to go for my safety. Back in Arizona, I wear a vest. Here, I figure I didn't need to wear a bulletproof vest. But in Arizona, I do. But my granddaughter here is now being threatened. I shared with her the other night, because I met with the U.S. Forest Service in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the chief, the deputy chief, and all the region. So they took me aside and they told me, be careful for your granddaughter. They have already come into your area to witness if she's a fake. And what we have learned is that we've already told the United States government, the congressional leaders, that Naeyln Pike is not a fake. And she said, I just want you to know, it was really an honor to meet a spiritual person like her. Because we thought that everybody was writing a script for her and her reading the script. I said, nope. I said, the United States better change. You better start working. You better start doing the right thing. Because I tell you, the younger people are coming. And if they're not guided right, this is where I speak of chaos. But it's really an honor to have Naeyln with me, because believe me, she's taken a lot of slack. She's journeyed a lot of places to speak. I can't even keep 8 years old in control, but she can when she's speaking. She's made people cry. And so I told her, I said, as best as I could describe myself today, I said, I know Grandma used to watch these movies. I said, I'm not too familiar with it, but I always remember John the Baptist when he stepped aside. I said, because there was new message coming. And I said, and that's what's wrong with leaders like John McCain. He should be stepping aside. So with that, my granddaughter, Naeyln Pike. Thank you. Thank you.
Naeyln Pike. Hello, my name is Naeyln Pike. I really want to say I'm honored to stand behind my grandfather. The video you had previously watched was really emotional for me because that was our whole year and it's been over a year now since we've been occupying and since we've been the stronghold. As a young girl, I will talk about my grandsister Chasian. Since I was a month years old, only a month old, and I was on top of Mount Grant. And since the age of 2, I've been a part of the Spirit of the Mountain Runners, an organization to protect Mount Grant against the telescopes from the Vatican and U of A. And I'm very blessed to continue the annual run because that is my home. It's where I come from. As an indigenous girl, as being an Apache girl, that is where we come from Mount Grant, Chasian, and Chichil, which is Oklat. And so my grandfather, my great-grandmother, my mother, and my father being in my life and teaching me my Apache way of life and who I am and what I need to do as an Apache girl to contain my identity of who I am and where I come from. And that was to take me back to my homelands, not the reservation, because that is where we're put as prisoners of war, being murdered, being raped, being stuck and confined in a place, and to be told, you can no longer be Apache. You can no longer find your belief in who you are. You have to be the American citizen. And so going through that generations and generations of tough times and my family teaching me to be strong and to be who I am and to always know where I come from. I lived in the city for about my whole life, and I realized, getting those questions asked, from kids my age, because I'm only 16, kids asking me, why is your hair long? Why are you Indian? You have your own land. Being discriminated of who I am. Some people have the struggle, and they want to, commit suicide into drug and alcohol. But for me, as a young girl, it was to teach myself to be strong, because my ancestors, they died for me to live. My grandfather is fighting for me, and my sisters and my cousins. And so I look at Oklat, Chichil, my home and where I come from. That place is wanting to be destroyed by an entity called Resolution Copper. But me and my sisters and my family and the Apache Stronghold and all the people and you sitting in front of me, we are fighting against those entities, those corporations that want to destroy Mother Earth. For me, as an indigenous girl, we have our connection to the land, the connection to Mother Earth, Naeyln Sun. And we as females have that connection. I say that because we are able to give life. We are able to give food to our children, teach our children where we come from and who we are, to have that connection. Naeyln Sun, Mother Earth, we are her children. We are her children. She gives us food. She gives us water. She gives us shelter. So when these corporations come and destroy Mother Earth, Oklat, what they want to do, to our sacred sites, that's disrespecting me, that's disrespecting us as women, saying that we can destroy her and disrespect her any way, in whichever way they want to. I am not going to be disrespected. My sisters are not going to be disrespected. My nieces are not going to be disrespected. And we are not going to be disrespected as women. We are strong and we are beautiful. And so I see now, and I see today, the women and the men here, we all have a foundation. My grandfather and my family are my foundation. Sishna Chasian, Mount Grant, is my foundation. You all have a foundation, and it's up to you to find that so you can continue to fight and stay strong. When I was 14, I had my sunrise ceremony, which is a coming of age ceremony. It's where a girl transforms into a woman. She has a 4-day ceremony, and it prepares her throughout her whole life. So when I was born, my mom knew that I was going to have the sunrise ceremony. And as I grew, I always told my mom and my grandfather I wanted my ceremony to be at Mount Graham. And, they lectured me and said, this is a place that is really sacred and you can't play with it. But I wanted it there and I felt it. I prayed about it and I knew I needed it there. I dreamt about it. And so when the time came for my ceremony, I was the first girl to have her sunrise ceremony on the top of Mount Graham because girls couldn't do it. We were confined in the reservation. So over 100 years, I was that first girl. It's those barriers we need to break. And if it wasn't for those barriers my grandfather broke, I wouldn't be able to have it there. If it's not for those barriers that each and every one of you can break, our future couldn't do the things that we are doing now. And so I talk to you and I ask you to break those barriers down. Stand with my grandfather. Be that generation so that our generation can stand and fight too. Because our past generations couldn't fix that. They tried, but if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. So it's us to make it better. It is us to stay strong and unified because we are all human beings. We all come from the one place, the Creator and Noble Son, Mother Earth. So I stand here and I say, as a girl, as being 16 years old and fighting for my people, fighting for places like Oak Flat, Mount Graham, that we are ready. We are going to fight and we are going to stand up to these corporations that want to destroy Mother Earth. The United States government and these corporations want to destroy who we are as indigenous people since it's time to step foot on these lands. And so I always laugh and I always smile in pride and honor of the resilience that we as indigenous people have because they want us extinct. They want us to not know who we are, not know our identity, and not know where we come from. But I can say I'm standing right here, breathing, alive with my indigenous people, with all people, wearing my moccasins, wearing my camp dress, because our identity is still with us. We know who we are, and we are living, breathing people too. And so I say, we need to come together. We need to look at these issues, and we need to fight for these issues to protect your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, because if you don't, we are gone. I stand to say that I'm going to protect my sisters because I am the oldest. I'm going to stand to protect the women, the men, the warriors that fight for us and respect us and who we are against these corporations, against these entities that want to destroy our way of being, our life, who we are, and destroy the one precious thing, water and Mother Earth. And this is why you come to these conferences, to fight for Mother Earth, to learn about these issues. Now it's up to you to make that stand. After this whole conference, you learned of all these certain things, and I'm telling you, it's either let us continue to be the victim, continue to let these oppressors oppress us, or to stand up for a better future for my people, for our people, and all of us. We need to unify as one people. We need to come together as one people, because in the end, we're all human beings. In the end, if these corporations continue to destroy our Mother Earth, we will be gone. This is why we say it's not an indigenous fight, an Apache fight, it's an all people's fight. Because in the end, if everything is gone, if Mother Earth is gone, we are gone. So once you leave this room, it is up to you to take that stand. It is up to you to take that step and make the difference for our future generation. You can stand by and let those oppressors oppress you and be the victim and continue to be the victim. Or you can make the difference and fight with us and be with us and stand with us. It's up to you. It really is.
closing, we just want to say that remember there's two bills in the House and the Senate. And when I said escalate, Paul Gosar, who's a representative out in Arizona, has notified the U.S. Forest Service to start making their move to remove us from the sacred place. So as soon as we get back, there's a battle between us and Paul Gosar. And so if you want to help, like Naeyln said, is that when you, not tonight, tomorrow, but notify the U.S. Forest Service, notify your congressional leaders that Paul Gosar better not touch the Native Americans out in Arizona at Oak Flats, because we have a number of people out there right now from different tribes. We have a number of non-Indians there helping protect Oak Flats. And this is a spiritual movement. This is a spiritual position that we're taking. And if they have to kill us to do it, then that's what's going to happen. But we need more people standing up to what is happening. And this will change, I guarantee you, this will change America if, like Naeyln said, if you stand up and take part. Because you have over 500 recognized tribes fighting this. This is the first time that we have that many recognized tribes turning on America and saying, hey, wait a minute, we've been with you, you took everything, and now you're after our religion and our sacred place. This is wrong. But that's not going to work if we don't have you. That's the bottom line. I don't care what anybody else says. If we don't have you, it is not going to happen. And I think that's why we bring this message to you. So in our traditional and religious way, Naeyln and I would like to leave with a song that brought us here, because we're not here as really keynote speakers. We're here as to bring you a message from these holy places. Not just San Carlos and Arizona, all these holy places are being attacked right now. Naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, narista ene yo he, na na. Naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, narista ene yo he, na na. Dia naguai ye yoni zini. Nago soche nago seche nini, naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, narista ene yo he, naha. Naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, naristo ene yo he, narista ene yo he, naha. Kauna here. What the song is that when we came here, the songs that are sung for us puts us in the Creator's house, and we're to speak through. He speaks through us, not us speaking. And then this song that we just sang sends us back home now to Arizona, because our job is done. Now it's up to you. And I know Naeyln had a last request, and that was if we could have a good camera up here, somebody to take a picture of the crowd. Because I got to tell you this, John McCain is scared of this. Gosar is scared of this. If you would give us the Oak Flat sign, this is the Oak Flat sign here, all over the world, all over the country. And when he sees people doing this, it frightens him. And I guarantee this picture's going to be in Washington on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming to the 34th Annual Public Interest Environmental Law Conference. Before you go, I just wanted to give a shout out to all of our amazing volunteers. our 1L reps, Maggie, Cole, and Zach. Can I have you stand up, please? Come on here. Maggie, Cole, and Zach, please. Without these three, the conference would be a complete fiasco. We couldn't do anything we do without them. Along with every other volunteer. Can I get, if you're seated, I know that many people are standing. If you're seated, will you stand up? Can we get a round of applause, please? Again, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time. It means so much to us. We look forward to seeing you next year.
We have the white screen. Awesome. Okay, we got everybody. Beautiful. Look at my way. There we go. That's a good deal. Come on, one, two. Just check that. Oh, that looks great. Come on, one, two, three. Go ahead.
And this concludes the